Hot news: Trump meets with families of Americans slain in Syria. The Washington Post. President Trump met on Saturday with the families of 4 Americans killed in a suicide bombing in Syria that was claimed by the Islamic State. The attack has images from Dover Air Force Base in Delaware showed Trump saluting a flag-shrouded casket containing the remains of a former Navy SEAL who was among the casualties of the deadliest attack on Americans in Syria since U.S. forces entered the country in 2015. Trump met earlier in the day with relatives of the 4 victims in a private room at Dover, a facility that serves as the destination for military cargo aircraft carrying the bodies of soldiers and others killed in overseas wars. In comments to reporters before departing from Washington, Trump said he was going to meet with relatives of our great heroes that have fallen, adding that "I think it might be the toughest thing I have to do as president." Trump was joined by Secretary of State Mike Pompeo and Acting Defense Secretary Patrick Shanahan. Trump's decision. His trip to Dover coincided with a turbulent day in Washington, as protesters assembled on the Mall for a women's march, and Trump prepared for an announcement from the White House aimed at resolving a budget battle over his demands for billions of dollars to erect a wall along the southern border, an impasse that has caused a government shutdown and left hundreds of thousands of federal workers without pay. Before the short flight to Delaware, Trump repeated disputed claims to have essentially rid Syria of Islamic State fighters, saying that "when I took over, Syria was loaded with ISIS, but we've brought it down to less than 1%. In fact, Trump depicted this week's attack, which targeted a restaurant frequented by Americans in the northern city of Manbij, as one that was carried out by remnants of an otherwise spent terrorist group. Though defeated, his assertions and determination to pull U.S. forces and advisors from Syria are at odds with officials in his administration who have led that effort. Former Defense Secretary Brett McBurk, who served as the special presidential envoy to the coalition to counter the Islamic State, also resigned in protest and said in an published in The Washington Post Friday that Trump's decisions were giving the Islamic State, and other American adversaries new life. The Pentagon identified 3 of those killed Wednesday as Army Chief Warrant Officer 2 Jonathan R. Farmer. Navy Chief Crip, the 4th individual, who worked for a defense contractor, was identified as Ghadir Taher. A suicide bomber detonated an explosive vest at the restaurant where the Americans had gathered after a meeting with local military officials. 3 U.S. troops. Earlier this week, Trump derailed plans by House Speaker Nancy Pelosi D. California and other lawmakers.
Raindrop, drop top, smoking, no cooking the hot pot. Fucking on your bitch, yeah, that. Looking up, open the park pot.